Just gonna kind of watch this a few times and go over some of the things that stand out to me. So I'll full screen it. Start here. Okay. Okay, the first one here. Come on, where does it start there? Okay. It feels kind of busy to me, like she's kind of wobbling around a little bit. So I'll just start with looking at her center of gravity. It's kind of drifting around, like her butt's kind of wagging back and forth a little bit. It feels like I can see what you're going for, but it feels like it doesn't quite match what her movements. It's almost like it's got a mind of its own. I think there's good bits in here, but it feels like overall it doesn't all work together. It feels like it's kind of a bunch of little parts, but it feels a little discombobulated a little bit. Like it looks like here, I don't know if it's just the angle, but it feels like her neck is like you translated her head this way. Like it's a little bit pulled over, and it's perfectly parallel though to her shoulders, so it feels a little bit even. Let's see. And then when she translates over from here to here, like her head, the distance between her head and shoulders, it all moves together at the same time. It feels kind of even. It feels like it's interpolating right there. She's kind of wagging back and forth too. I would simplify that. I mean, it's got good stuff in there, but I feel like overall her body movement's just kind of, just um, kind of just wagging back and forth a little too much. Like when she says more, like there should be a pause there. Like she kind of is drifting. See, it feels kind of mushy. Okay. I think your lip sync is pretty good. I think it's a little over enunciated. And you got a lot of little eye things going on, which, again, I think it's too busy. I would simplify that. Right there. Like she looks up, down, blinks, and then comes up. It just feels like there's like three ideas when there should just be one. I like it. I like. There's a lot of good stuff in it. Now I'll watch this guy. He moves too much, and it feels like his expressions are almost like he sees something up here, and he's not paying attention to what she says. Like I know it's his hair, but it feels like they're not connected, and I feel like he kind of distracts me from her, but she's the focus. Like when she starts talking and he's smiling, I would keep him in the smile, maybe soften it a little bit until, hold on. When she says look a bit more, then I would blink him and have him looking back this way. Like he kind of looking behind himself like, "Uh-oh, what's she going to say?" And then when she says it, like when she says the devil more whatever, then he would maybe blink back over and look up at his hair, and then like do a couple eye darts around, like he's thinking like, oh man, like something's going through his head, like she's right, or oh, I knew I shouldn't have did that, or something like that. And then the whole cringe thing at the end, I would just I would not do that, and I would, when he's doing the eye dart thing looking around, then I might have him just kind of shrink a little, like he takes a breath, like like disappointed in himself, but not so broad. That way it wouldn't distract from her, and people watch it a couple of times. They'll want to watch it to see his expression because they're not being distracted by him versus her. They'll watch her, then they'll play it again to see him. Okay. I think this one it's okay. there's when he does the shrug back, it feels a little bit like, again, discombobulated, like things aren't working together. Right there. It feels like I'm not quite sure what he's doing. Is he shrugging? It feels a little odd. Is he taking a breath? It doesn't quite read. Like if he's taking a breath and there's no in there, then if he's going to take a breath, then you need time at the top. So he goes like, right? So at the top, he needs like a pause and then breathe out. Right now, he just kind of undulates back and forth at the same pace. It doesn't feel like the timing is too even, basically. So let's watch that from the beginning. Like when he says, is it God as good as he not? Is that what he says? Hold on. Like I probably would not turn his head until after he starts to get to not. Like God is good as he not. Like he starts to look over, like he holds the beginning part a little longer and then blinks over faster on the not part. So he's not interpolating over so much. And then when he looks over it, I like the eye darts and all that. I would keep that the same. I would just get him over there a little quicker and hold him in the beginning a little longer. See how it's kind of feels almost like I can tell that like when you're creating your poses, you're putting like variation in there so it doesn't feel like he's stiff, but it feels like some of the things are kind of wobbling around, and usually I get away from that like when if I do a key pose, like let's say this is your key, right? I'll go back to the previous key. Let's say it's this one, and then I think he's going to arc over, and then I know I want the arms to get there later, so I'll create this pose, you know, wherever it is. Let's say it's this one, and then I will go a few frames back and steal frames and pull it back and build my breakdown off of that. That I know everything's working together when it interpolates from, or when it moves from one point to the next. I know that since my breakdown is based off of that stolen frame, then I would go in and offset the arms a little bit. That way I know everything's going to kind of come up together and feel like it's working together. It's not going to be all wobbly, you know? And then like the all the time, I think he would take a breath, and then when he does, he kind of comes up and says not all the time and comes down again. I again, it's like two ideas. I probably would bring him up and then on the way down say not all the time. Like, I think you have some good things in here, but it just feels like sometimes you need to simplify it a little bit. Now this one I think is pretty punchy. I liked um I mean I like the that part is really good. Now when she's writing on the board, let's see. The first thing she does is she feels like she's being driven by just her cog. So if you watch right there, like her shoulders in relation to her hips, when she like translates over, it feels like she's kind of a little stiff. So I would have, you see what I mean? It feels like CG animation. I would have put a little tilt in her shoulders, maybe have a little drift in the spine so she's leaning a little bit left, and her head and neck. So when she comes to that stop, then they kind of overlap a little bit. They stop at like a frame or two later. So she kind of has some drag on her. Just a little bit. Very, very subtle. That would fix that part. And I would say, what's she leading with? Because right now, if you look at the hand in relation to her hips, right in the beginning, and her shoulder, when she moves from left to right, it's all together. So the first thing we see is this kind of stiff thing. See what I mean? Like the first few, like 8-10 frames, it feels like that. So actually, can I frame by frame this? Let's see. Oh, it doesn't do it. Is there a frame by frame on here? No. Okay, well, so And then when she drops that hand, right, she gets hit with the paper ball, but it feels too like it's slowing in to hit her in the head. It would go bink and bounce a little bit more. Right now it feels a little bit slow. See what I mean? Feels almost like it touches her hair and gets stuck there for a little bit. I would have it bounce off. And her reaction feels like she kind of translates her head down. You see what I mean? And then it turns really violently, like it's on a swivel, and you only turn the head, not the neck. It should be like a combination of the two. I think you did translate the head down. It feels like a little bit robotic. Boom. You see what I mean? It's a combination of those. You can translate the head down, but you have to have a combination of the neck in there. And when it turns, the head has to turn too, or the neck has to turn too. You can't just rotate the head like it's on a swivel. And her upper body, I think, would turn a little bit more too. Like with her, just a little subtle twist. When she turns here, there's a wobble right there. Feels a little bit like she kind of goes, right there. Like watch her rear end and her upper body when she turns around. See how her upper body moves with the hips? It's almost like if you're going to have a violent action with the cog, there's going to be a reaction with the spine and the head and neck and everything above it. It won't move exactly with the cog, because it's got weight and there's drag on that spine. The spine, there's a delay on it. So if you watch her turn around, see how like everything stops at the same time, and then she has that little wobble. She kind of turns, wobbles this way, and it comes forward. There would be so much overlap in the upper body and everything. It's a very violent action. And then her weight on the foot feels a little mushy right there. Like she's got her weight over that foot right there. She's lifting the foot up, but she's got her weight over it already. It feels a little floaty. If she is going to shuffle her foot forward there, we wouldn't see it. It would just zip over there. Like, it wouldn't come up so high. Because she would fall. She's off balance. So when she turns here, when she looks, I probably would drop the arm down a little bit here. And then as she turns, that arm would still be back here. Like the arms are delayed as she turns around. Then they would catch up as she turns around. That would probably lead right into her lifting that up and throwing it down. Looks like she's smiling here too. Like there's good stuff in here, but again, at the end, she interpolates back. Like she does this really nice, and then see how she just goes backwards. There, I probably would hold her out there a little longer. And then I would dip her down as she comes back and then drag the head and spine again. I think a lot of it is just, looks like you're afraid to animate the spine, head, and neck. You're just keeping them kind of vertical instead of putting some drag on them. Okay, this one has some good stuff too. I think like if I look at the hands in the beginning, the hands kind of plant at the same time, and the arm looks, see how the shoulders are really far back here? Like if he's pushing himself back by there, if he's, I don't know if he would be this rigid, like you see how he feels this reverse spine, then he's pushing here. If his arm is this straight, his shoulder's going to start to come forward. It's not going to stay locked back like that. And it feels like he kind of, there's some sort of imaginary force that stops him right there. I wish I could frame by frame this. See how he goes forward, back, up, down, like if you watch his head there? There's a lot of little actions I think you could simplify. Back, down, up, down, up. Like, again, it feels like there's like good stuff in here, but simplify. I would simplify it. You lock out the elbow there. And then when he comes up there, the stretch, I think you need a little more time here. Like it's like you're rushing through the action. Like he stands up and then goes right into that. Like he needs to like take a moment, like it's like almost like realize that he's tired and then anticipate and come up into that stretch. Give us some time there. And then I would probably drag that arm later, just a little bit later. It kind of comes up really early, like that. See how it kind of arcs here? I probably would have it down here. When his arm, when he's stretching like this, I'd have his head and neck still kind of forward, and have the arm just, the fingers just coming off the table at this point. Then the arm would come up. I would arc it this way, something like that, like an S curve, kind of whoosh, leading with the elbow or shoulder elbow, then the wrist. And I would give him a stagger here. So he'd go, and then snap out of it. So we have more time. So it's kind of the timing's varied. It's not so. It feels like I said, like he's rushing through each action. And when he jerks here, it feels painful, like you're just bending one part of the spine instead of incorporating the whole spine. You see what I mean? See that bend right there? Then it feels like his torso translates forward. Right there. Feels like his body's elongating. Yeah, so that part, I probably would. I like how you're reaching out to the table. That's, that's good. Like he goes up. But again, like, sorry, I'll jump back a little bit. I talked about the wobbling thing. If you look at him, like right there, there's some little kind of movements in there I think can be cleaned up. I think you need to look at your spine and look for ways to eliminate things that are kind of fighting, because you have some counter animation going there. I can see it. That's why it's wobbling. And isolate those parts and simplify them. Like get rid of that wobble. It's probably, if it's like, X and then Y and then Z, right? Then it's probably something in your X, right? And then you just need to, like, instead of the curved kind of doing that, you want it to do that. Get rid of those little peaks and stuff. So that'll help. And like his reactions, they feel a little isolated. Like when he does this quick, that it feels like a mistake. Like it's like if you're going to do a violent action, then you have to have something that like a recoil or like an overshoot that makes the eye believe it, right? Because he's going pop into one thing, and then everything stays rigid. His head and neck would have some drag in it a little bit. You see what I mean? It just pops up there. When the head would recoil, would kind of it's almost like you need rigid and then soft, right? So you need he jerks into the action, but then the head kind of settles into the head and neck, because right now it just feels like it's this very violent little action. And here, when he's reaching, I'm not quite sure what he's doing. He's holding something here, I guess. Like if he's going to reach like that, he probably would first step out and lower his center of gravity so he can get closer to it, right? He would probably like get his foot out here so he can lower his center of gravity and possibly reach out. So he would get, his hand would be stretched out like that, his head would be about here, and his foot would be there. So he can really try to stretch as far as he can. Up here, it's not doing anything. It feels like some sort of half-baked attempt. Like he's not really trying, he's faking it, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, and I think the head look back and forth is the same as the other stuff. You need to break your actions up. It looks a little too even. You see what I mean? Lead with something. I would lead with the head. Like his head turns and then the body, softens afterwards. Like he leads with the head and then there's a little bit of a drift on the body and looks back the other way. Again, leading with the head, and then the body would still slow into that. I like the leap part. That's very nice. Like the bounce feels a little bit rigid because I think he's got all this momentum this way, going screen left, I think when he bounces, he would bounce. He would bounce, and then maybe just an inch or two forward, he would bounce a little bit more screen left. He wouldn't just stop there. So if you watch it, you see what I mean? It's kind of bing, bing, bing. But he's got all this momentum, and then he just stops. Okay, I think that's it. I know it's a lot of stuff, but it looks good though. I can see your stuff's getting better and better.